I wasn't expecting to see him that day. Not while standing in line for cotton candy, with Isla holding my hand and the boys running ahead. But there he was, Julian Mercer, standing by the entrance gate of the amusement park, dressed in his usual navy blazer, that same confident tilt to his chin. And for a moment the air left my lungs. He didn't see me at first. His eyes were scanning the crowd, probably looking for someone important. But then he froze. His gaze locked onto the three kids, and then onto me. Something in his posture shifted, like the ground beneath him had cracked wide open. He took one hesitant step forward. That's when I pulled my children closer to me, instinctively. "Mom, can I have the rainbow one?" Isla tugged on my sleeve, pointing at the spinning cotton candy machine, her little voice cutting through the rising hum in my ears. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Because Julian, my ex, the man who ran when I told him I was pregnant, was 10 steps away, staring at the children he never knew existed. He had no idea. Not about Isla, not about the boys. And definitely not that I was the woman I had become without him. That was the moment everything I had buried for the last 6 years rose to the surface. Anger, betrayal, fear, and something else. Something steadier. I looked into Isla's face and realized I wasn't the same woman he left behind. But to understand how we got here, to a quiet Saturday at a theme park turned upside down by a ghost from my past, you'd have to go back to the beginning. Back to the night when everything changed. It was past midnight, and I was sitting on the windowsill of our small apartment in Santa Barbara, knees pulled up to my chest, watching the city lights blur behind a thin veil of tears. My sister, Elise, had just come home from her office holiday party, heels in hand and perfume still lingering in the air. She stopped when she saw me, backlit by the glow outside. "Sophie, you okay?" she asked softly, stepping closer. I turned to her, and even in the dim light, she could see the trails on my cheeks. Her face changed. Concern replaced the after-party glow. "I'm pregnant," I said. My voice didn't shake, but hers did. "What? Does Julian know?" I nodded. "He does, and he suggested I take care of it. He's leaving for a placement in San Francisco. Says it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Elise sank down beside me, speechless. God, he's such a coward. I didn't argue, because that night, when Julian walked away from me, he also walked away from something he didn't even know was going to be 3 someones. Julian Mercer wasn't the kind of man who vanished easily from memory. He was all charm and brilliance, the kind of tech entrepreneur who could talk about AI ethics and the poetry of Rilke in the same breath. We met at a charity gala for pediatric oncology patients of all places. I was hired to do the floral installations, twisting cherry blossom branches into archways, suspending orchids from glass baubles above the banquet tables. My hands were sticky with flower sap, and my hair was tied up in a loose braid when he walked over, struggling to fix the projector for his keynote. "Didn't expect floristry to require such geometry," he said, watching me calculate the angle of a cascading vine like it was a math equation. "And I didn't expect a tech guy to notice anything outside his screen," I replied without looking up. He laughed, and I remember thinking he has a kind laugh. Not loud, just warm. We talked more later, after the speeches and applause, when the room had thinned out and I was boxing up centerpieces. He offered to walk me to my car. We stood under a street lamp, talking about whether beauty could be programmed, whether human connection was an algorithm or something more sacred. He asked for my number. A week later, he took me to a Japanese restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of State Street. We sat until they turned off the music and started wiping down tables. And even then, we didn't want to leave. For the next 3 months, it was all magic. Mornings with coffee on the terrace, lazy afternoons with playlists and paintbrushes, nights filled with whispered dreams. He told me about his company's HQ in San Francisco and how they were expanding. "One day, we'll work from a beach house in Carmel," he'd say. 2 golden retrievers, a vegetable garden, and you arranging wildflowers in the kitchen window. I almost believed him. Almost. But there was always something in the back of my mind, something that didn't sit right. A hesitation in his voice when we talked about long-term things. A flicker in his eyes when I mentioned children. So when I saw the 2 pink lines on that test, I didn't celebrate. My first thought wasn't joy, it was fear. I told him 2 days later. We were at a cafe near the water. I waited until our coffee arrived, so I wouldn't have to look him in the eye when I said it. I'm pregnant. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his smile flickered and vanished. I was going to tell you. I got accepted into the residency program in San Francisco. I leave in 2 weeks. For how long? I asked, my throat tightening. 6 months, maybe more. I stared at him, and all the things he'd promised, the house, the dogs, the ocean, suddenly felt like background noise in someone else's dream. There are options, he said quietly, finally meeting my eyes. We're young. It's not the right time. I stood up, walked out. He didn't follow. That was the last time I saw him. Until today. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of eggs sizzling in the kitchen and the faint clinking of china. Elise was already up, brewing coffee like it was the only thing keeping the universe from falling apart. She didn't ask how I slept. She didn't have to. I made tea, she said, setting a cup in front of me, with honey and a splash of something stronger for myself. I wrapped my fingers around the mug, trying to find warmth in it that I couldn't find in myself. I don't know what I'm doing, I said. I don't even know if I can do this. You want the baby? I paused, then nodded. Yeah, I do. But I'm scared. I don't know how to raise a child alone. What about money? What will Mom and Dad say? Elise leaned back and gave me that look older sisters have when they're about to speak the truth you're not ready to hear. Mom and Dad are coming by tonight. You should tell them. That night, the 4 of us sat around the dinner table in stiff silence. Mom passed the salad. Dad made a joke about traffic on the 101. I waited until the plates were cleared and the tea was poured. Then I said it. I'm pregnant. Just that. Simple. Final. Julian's name hung silently between us like smoke. I added, he's gone. He doesn't want to be involved. Mom's teacup clinked against its saucer. Dad didn't say a word. I've decided to keep the baby. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Dad, my quiet, steady, university history professor father, stood, walked around the table, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Sophie, you could never disappoint us. He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since that cafe with Julian, I let the tears fall. Mom joined us a second later. We'll figure it out, she said, even though her voice shook. We're your family. That's what family does. I don't remember much else from that evening except the smell of Mom's lavender lotion and the soft beat of Elise's hand on my back. The next day, I had my first ultrasound appointment. I was still trying to wrap my head around the idea of becoming a mother when the doctor squinted at the screen and said something that didn't make sense. Looks like we've got 3 heartbeats. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? She pointed at the blurry shapes on the monitor. Triplets. 1 here, 1 there, and 1 tucked behind. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even feel my own body. The doctor kept talking about multiple births, risks, prenatal vitamins, but it was all white noise. 3. I was 29, single, recently abandoned, and now carrying 3 human beings. I left the clinic in a fog, gripping a crumpled referral slip and my own disbelief. When I got home, Mom and Elise were in the kitchen arguing over stroller brands and whether the hallway closet could be converted into a nursery. I sat down at the table and said it quietly, like saying it louder might make it less real. There's 3 of them. The room went still. Even the kettle stopped whistling. Elise's eyes widened. Well, of course there are. Then Mom laughed, a sharp, borderline hysterical sound, and Elise followed. And then somehow I laughed too, the kind that leaves you gasping, clutching your sides, trying not to fall apart. We laughed until we cried, and then we got to work. No one ever really prepares you for carrying 3 lives inside one body. Not the books, not the blogs, not even the doctors with their endless pamphlets and checklists. By the end of the first trimester, I was already waking up nauseated, sore, and strangely hollow, like my body belonged to someone else now. The smells at the flower shop, which used to calm me, now turned my stomach inside out. Roses? Vomit. Lilies? Headache. The one thing that didn't make me queasy was ginger cookies, and I carried a stash in every bag I owned. Maybe you should go on maternity leave early, Tatiana, the owner of the shop, suggested after watching me make 3 sprints to the restroom in one morning. And live on what? I smiled, wiping my face with a cool cloth. I need to earn as much as I can before the babies arrive. That same day, my co-worker Lyra slid a mug of mint tea toward me and set a cookie next to it. My sister had triplets, she said. They're 7 now, tiny tornadoes. But she says it was the best thing that ever happened to her. She didn't say it with pity, just quiet understanding. And in that moment, it meant more than any parenting podcast ever could. At home, we were becoming a unit. Dad started drawing up spreadsheets, diaper costs formula, bulk discounts on wipes. He suggested we invest in a bigger washing machine and reusable cloth diapers. Elise found a second-hand triple stroller on Craigslist that looked like a lunar rover. We turned my old wardrobe closet into a nursery, painted it yellow, bought 1 crib, then another, then a third from a clearance sale. Every movement hurt by the time I reached 30 weeks. My ribs felt like they were cracking. My ankles disappeared. I couldn't walk a block without gasping for air. I didn't know pregnancy could feel like a battlefield, I told Elise one night. That's because no one talks about this part, she replied, massaging my swollen feet. And then, one cold February morning, I felt sharp pain. Then another. I was only 32 weeks along. The next few hours blurred into fluorescent lights and urgent voices. I remember holding Mom's hand in the hospital hallway, trying not to cry as they wheeled me into the OR for a C-section. The room was cold, the beeping machines too loud. And then came the surgeon's voice. Baby boy, 1 pound, 15 ounces. A pause. Second boy, 2 pounds even. And then little girl, 1 pound, 14. I didn't get to hold them right away. I didn't even see their faces. Just the briefest glimpse of 3 tiny bundles whisked away into the NICU, wrapped in plastic and light. It wasn't silence that followed, it was a hum. Machines, breathing tubes, monitors. Life, barely there, but fighting. 3 children. So fragile, so real. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But as I lay there, stitched and shaking, one thought echoed louder than all the rest. They're here, and I have to become someone strong enough to deserve them. The days that followed were a blur of antiseptic and exhaustion. I wasn't allowed to hold them for the first few days. Just sit by their incubators, whisper their names, and press my fingertips against the glass. Finn had a tube down his throat. Theo's lungs kept collapsing. Isla's heartbeat fluttered like a nervous bird on every monitor. I remember asking the nurse, "Are they going to be okay?" She didn't lie. She didn't promise. She just said they're fighters, just like their mom. By day 5, I was allowed to do skin to skin, 1 baby at a time. Isla first. She weighed less than a bag of sugar. Her skin was translucent. Her hair, a faint auburn fuzz, smelled like cotton and something holy. I cried for 20 minutes straight, holding her. Then came Finn, then Theo. 3 times the love, 3 times the fear. I was discharged 2 weeks before they were. Going home without them felt wrong, like I'd left my lungs in that NICU ward. Every day, I bussed back and forth between the hospital and our apartment. Elise adjusted her work hours to cover nights. Mom packed meals in labeled containers. Dad quietly deposited every spare dollar into a fund labeled the Chaos Fund on the fridge. And still, the money bled out faster than it came in. Formula, diapers, Doctor visits. The triple stroller needed a car it could actually fit into, and we didn't have one. The rent didn't stop just because life had become a war zone. I have to work, I told Elise one night, rocking Finn in the crook of my elbow while Isla whimpered against my shoulder. You're already doing the hardest job in the world. I need to do more. So I started small. When the babies finally slept, if they slept, I opened my laptop and edited promotional videos for local businesses. Just short clips for hair salons, restaurants, the occasional yoga class. $50 here, $100 there. It added up. Barely. Then a lifeline. Tatiana, my old boss at the flower shop, reached out. I know you can't come in, but what if you helped run our Instagram? Photos, posts, maybe stories. I said yes. With one hand, I fed Theo. With the other, I wrote captions about tulip symbolism and daisy bouquets. I staged little photo shoots on the dining table with whatever flowers Tatiana sent over once a week. I used free editing apps and natural light. I poured everything I had into those images: color, peace, quiet joy. The account grew, and so did I. By the time the babies turned 6 months, I had managed to land 2 more social media clients. Small businesses run by women like me, who knew what it meant to juggle chaos with grace. And then the smiles came. Finn grinned first, sudden and gummy. Theo followed a day later. Isla, ever the dramatic one, waited until we were all exhausted and then beamed at me like the sun itself. That night, I cried into my pillow not because I was afraid, but because I finally wasn't. We were still broke, still tired, still constantly covered in something sticky or sour. But I was starting to believe we were going to be okay. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when the world tilted again. The kind of California day where the breeze is soft, the sun lazy, and the whole city feels like it's breathing just a little slower. We were at the park, our usual one near the botanical gardens. The kids were 5 now, bold, messy, endlessly curious. Finn had found a pile of crunchy leaves and was launching them into the air like a snowstorm. Theo, as always, was collecting. He had a strict classification system. Yellow goes in one pile, red in another. Isla, my wild heart, was twirling beneath the trees, arms wide like she was dancing with ghosts. I remember thinking, this is the good stuff. This quiet, this chaos, this life. Then I saw her. At first, just the silhouette. Tall, elegant, spine straight as a dancer's. Cream-colored cashmere coat, matching leather gloves. She moved like someone who belonged in museums, not playgrounds. Something about her struck me. A tug in my gut I didn't understand until I saw her face fully. Vivian Mercer, Julian's mother. The last time I'd seen her, I was 23, barefoot in her manicured garden, covered in mud and blood from a bird I'd tried to save. Julian wasn't home, but she'd invited me in. She cleaned my hands, gave me a dress from her boutique spring collection, and said with a smile, "You're not like the others he's brought home." It was a strange moment, warm, quiet, out of place in the whirlwind that came after. I never saw her again. Until now. Her eyes found mine. She hesitated, just a flicker, and then walked toward me with a kind of grace only money and grief can teach. Behind me, I heard Isla shriek. A moment later, Finn called out, "Mom!" Isla fell. I turned and saw her at the bottom of a low slope, clutching her knee, blood trickling down her shin. Time slowed. Everything inside me surged toward her. But before I could reach her, Vivian was already kneeling beside Isla, calm as ever. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said gently. "Grandma's got something for that." Grandma. The word made me freeze mid-step. Vivian opened her designer handbag like it was a medical kit. She pulled out wipes, antiseptic spray, and a Band-Aid with cartoon flowers on it. Isla whimpered, flinched, but let the stranger touch her. Finn stood nearby, fists clenched, watching every move. Theo had his hands over his ears, overwhelmed by the sound of Isla's crying. "You always carry a first aid kit?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. Old habit. You never know what a day will bring, she said without looking up. She sprayed, wiped, covered, and then only then stood. You're Sophie, she said. Not a question. I nodded, unable to find words. And they're his, aren't they? The way she said it, soft, not accusing, struck something deep. I could have lied, could have deflected, but instead I looked her straight in the eye and said what I hadn't said aloud in 5 years. Yes, they're Julian's. Vivian looked over at them, 3 children chasing wind and memory through golden leaves, and whispered, I thought so. She didn't press me after that. She didn't demand explanations or lecture me about secrets. Instead, she offered Isla her hand and said, My car's just outside the park gates. Let me take you to a clinic. That cut should be cleaned properly. I hesitated. My instinct screamed to say no, to protect, to retreat. But Isla was sniffling and pale, and I hadn't brought the emergency kit I usually carried. And something in Vivian's voice, it wasn't pity, it wasn't guilt, it was certainty. So I nodded. Thank you. We'd appreciate it. She picked Isla up with surprising ease for someone so poised, her heels barely making a sound on the pavement. Finn and Theo followed close behind, quiet now, watching her like she was some creature out of a bedtime story. Her driver opened the car door without being asked. It was a black town car, sleek, polished, nothing like the stroller-worn minivan I dreamed of affording. Do you always travel like this? I asked, trying to mask the discomfort in my voice. Old habit, she said again. One I never quite shook. The ride to the clinic was only 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Vivian kept the boys entertained with stories of butterflies the size of dinner plates in Thailand and a monkey that once stole her purse in Bali. Finn leaned into her shoulder. Theo even smiled. Isla, drowsy from the pain and the attention, rested her head on Vivian's chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. At the clinic, Vivian was impressive. She spoke with staff like she owned the building. Not arrogantly, just with that rare confidence that comes from always being listened to. Within minutes, Isla was being examined by a soft-voiced doctor who assured me it was a superficial cut. No stitches, just cleaning and a prescription ointment. While we waited, Vivian somehow produced coloring books and crayons from her bag for the boys. They drew quietly in the corner, Theo sketching a lopsided dinosaur, Finn focused on a race car. I watched her, and it struck me she wasn't guessing. She knew. She saw Julian in their faces, in their hands, in the way Theo furrowed his brow when he concentrated, just like his father had. When we left the clinic, she made one more stop, an upscale pharmacy. She returned with a discreet bag of medications and 2 more bags from a nearby toy shop. This isn't necessary, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's not for you, she replied gently, handing the bags to the boys. It's for them. I should have stopped her, should have drawn a line. But something inside me, some exhausted, grateful, cautious part, just nodded. When we reached my building, she insisted on carrying Isla up the stairs while I held the others. At the door, she paused. Thank you for not shutting me out today, she said softly. I hesitated. Then you helped. That matters. She didn't try to hug me, didn't offer advice, just handed me a cream-colored card. My number, in case you need anything, or just want to talk. I watched her walk away, the boys waving from behind me, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel entirely alone. That night, after the kids were in bed, Elise came over with 2 bottles of ginger ale and a skeptical brow. You let her take Isla to the doctor? She asked, dropping onto the couch and pulling her knees up like we were still in college. She had antiseptic, crayons, and an actual driver. I was outnumbered and underprepared. Right, but she's also Julian's mom. I know. Elise didn't say anything for a while, just sipped her drink and stared at the stack of laundry baskets crowding the corner of the room. So what now? I don't know, I admitted. She gave me her number, said I could call if I needed anything. Are you going to? I looked down at the cream-colored card, still sitting on the kitchen counter, untouched. She didn't try to take over. She didn't make promises. She just helped. Elise nodded slowly. Maybe she's trying to be what Julian never was. Maybe. The next morning, Vivian called. Her voice was calm, businesslike. Hope Sisla. Doing well, I replied. Thank you again. She paused. Then, would you be open to meeting me again? Just to talk. Maybe at the playground near your apartment. 6 o'clock. I hesitated, then said yes. At exactly 6, she appeared, this time in jeans and a soft blue sweater, holding a small bouquet of daisies and a large manila envelope. For Isla, she said, handing over the flowers. She seems like a daisy girl. She is, I admitted. She talks to them at the garden center. We sat on the bench while the kids played, the dusk light turning everything gold. I wanted to give you this, she said, offering the envelope. What is it? Not for you. For them. For school, or art lessons, or bikes. Open a savings account. Use it however you see fit. I didn't take it right away. Why are you doing this? She watched the kids, Theo crouched, studying a ladybug. Finn trying to climb the monkey bars, Isla spinning in the sand. Because I made mistakes, she said softly. With Julian. I thought success would protect him from life. But I missed his childhood, trying to secure his adulthood. Her voice caught, just for a second, the first crack in the polished surface. I'm not asking to replace anyone. I just don't want to miss this too. Something in me softened. Not trust, not forgiveness, but maybe understanding. My mom's probably going to be jealous, I murmured, half smiling. She's already claimed all 3 of them as her own. Vivian chuckled. Well, I can be very persuasive. We sat in silence, 2 mothers, one by birth, one by choice, watching the children they both now loved. She didn't push, didn't ask for more than I was ready to give, and that made all the difference. By the time the streetlights blinked on and the kids came running back with scraped knees and muddy shoes, I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. I didn't have to carry this alone anymore. Not if I chose not to. The seasons changed quietly, like they always do when you're too busy surviving to notice. One morning, Isla woke up asking why the leaves were crunchy, and I realized fall had arrived without asking permission. Our apartment still smelled faintly of formula and crayons, but now there were school applications on the table and new shoes lined up by the door. 1 year had passed since I saw Vivian at the park, and in that year everything changed. She became something like family. Not loud, not possessive, just present. She showed up to birthdays with carefully wrapped books. She brought cookies from that overpriced bakery downtown and let the kids frost them terribly. She asked before stepping in, always. She listened more than she spoke. And slowly, she carved out a place in our lives without force. Then one afternoon, she invited me to her office. No kids, just us. Her boutique had just opened a new store in the heart of Santa Barbara, and I'd helped design the window displays. Draped linen, eucalyptus branches, live succulents blooming beside delicate silks. She poured tea into delicate porcelain cups and said, "Julian's coming back." The words dropped between us like something heavy and sharp. He's what? Moving back. Permanently. The board appointed a new lead for the San Francisco office, and he's taking a step back. Wants to start something smaller here. More grounded, apparently. I stared at her. The room shifted slightly, like the light wasn't quite falling right anymore. Does he know? Not about the children. Not about you. She paused. I thought that decision should be yours. I swallowed hard, fingers trembling against the teacup. Thank you. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. I also want you to look over these. I've transferred 30% of my shares to your name. It's not a gift. It's an investment in what you've done for this business, for my grandchildren. My brain stalled. Vivian, why not Julian? Her gaze softened. He's my son, but he's not the one who's been here, who's built this with me. You are. I didn't cry. Not then. Not until later that night, when I was brushing Isla's hair and she said, Grandma Vivian told me I should plant daisies in spring so they grow strong. Is that true? And I whispered, Yes, baby. It's true. And that was the day at the amusement park, the one where I saw Julian again after 6 years, the one that started all of this. Vivian had planned it as a surprise for the kids, a day of laughter and cotton candy. But then I saw him, Julian, leaning against the ticket booth in a crisp button-down, sunglasses perched on his head. And just like that, time folded in on itself. Same jawline, same hands, same eyes, and the exact same gesture, running his fingers through his hair. Theo did every time he was confused. He didn't see me at first, but then he looked up, our eyes locked, and everything around us stopped. He stared, first at me, then at the children. Finn had paused by a game booth, waving at me to watch his throw. Theo stood beside him, serious as ever, explaining the rules like he owned the park. Isla clung to my side, chewing on her straw and humming. Julian blinked like he was trying to process a language he hadn't spoken in years. I stepped forward slightly, shielding Isla with my arm without even thinking. Sophie, he asked, barely above a whisper. My name from his mouth didn't sting the way I thought it would. It just felt irrelevant, like an echo from another life. Hello, Julian. His gaze jumped to the children again. This time it lingered. His lips parted. Them. I nodded. Yes. He stumbled closer, stopping just short of the boundary only parents instinctively know exists. They're mine. Finn. Theo. Isla. He said nothing, just stared, eyes moving from Finn's unruly dark curls to Theo's focused stare to Isla's dimpled smile. They look like me. They should. He opened his mouth, then closed it, rubbed a hand across his jaw, like he was trying to wake himself up. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at him the way I might look at a stranger who took the wrong seat at a dinner party. You made it clear, Julian. You said it wasn't the right time, that there were options. He flinched. I didn't know there were 3. You didn't want to know about one. We stood there, strangers tangled in a memory neither of us wanted to unpack in front of a cotton candy machine. I want to be in their lives, he said suddenly. I missed everything I know, but I want to start now. I inhaled slowly. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat, because I'd already lived the hard part. You don't get to start for you, Julian, I said calmly. You start for them, or you don't start at all. He blinked. I don't want your guilt. I don't want your redemption arc. But if you truly want to know them, love them, and show up consistently, we'll figure it out. He looked past me, toward the kids again. What are they like? I smiled. A real one, soft and bittersweet. Finn's the leader. Bold, brave, always running ahead. Theo thinks before he breathes. He'll be an engineer or a philosopher, maybe both. Isla's the heart. She feels everything. She's the one who makes the boys stop fighting without a word. His throat moved like he was swallowing a stone. You've done an incredible job, he whispered. I didn't do it alone, I said. And that was the truth. Behind me were years of midnight feedings and triple fevers, but also Elise, my parents, and, surprisingly, Vivian. I took a deep breath and pointed to the bench beneath the maple tree where the kids were gathered. They're waiting for their cotton candy. Julian followed my gaze. Would it be okay if I... Yes, I said. Go. And as he stepped forward, tentative and unsure, I stayed behind, watching the man who once walked away now try, finally, to step in. Not as my partner, but as their father. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Isla curled beside her stuffed rabbit, the boys sharing a blanket like they always did. I sat on the balcony with a mug of chamomile and stared out at the city. The air smelled like orange blossoms and ocean salt. Familiar, comforting, and yet everything felt unsettled. Elise called just after 10. So, how did it go? I told her. Everything. The moment Julian saw them. The silence. The questions. The way he looked at them like the truth was too big to swallow all at once. You okay? She asked. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Yeah, I think so. There was a long pause before she said, Do you trust him? I don't know, but I trust me. And that felt like the most important part. Julian didn't get to come back and press rewind. He didn't get to erase the nights I rocked, crying babies while nursing cracked skin and wondering if I'd ruined all our lives. But he could start now if he was ready to do the work. If he was willing to stay when it wasn't convenient. If he could put their needs before his guilt. And me? I wasn't the girl he left behind. I was a woman who'd rebuilt her life out of baby socks, grocery receipts, and soft, unbreakable hope. A woman who now ran the most profitable boutique in downtown Santa Barbara, who balanced invoices with diaper changes and business calls with PDA meetings. And I wasn't doing it alone. Vivian kept showing up, not with fanfare, but with constancy. A bouquet of sunflowers on hard days. Surprise pickups from daycare when a meeting ran long. Quiet advice in a quiet voice. She never tried to replace my mother. She never asked for credit. She just loved them, in her own way. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe for a long time. Not all good things come from the right people. Sometimes they come from the ones you least expect. So when people ask me now, was it right to let her in, but not him? I never answer quickly, because the truth is layered. Vivian didn't abandon me when I was bleeding in the street. Julian did. But she also didn't have to come back. And she did. The kids don't ask for details. They don't ask why their dad only appeared when they were 5, or why their grandma looks at me like she's memorizing. They just live, loudly, honestly, with so much joy it breaks and heals me every single day. Would I have done it differently? No, because every cracked piece of this life came together to build something unshakable. We were never whole in the traditional sense, but somehow we became complete. And that is more than I ever thought we'd have.